All right, so when we talk about developing leaders who lead, one of the frustrations I often hear from clients is that they feel like their people don't know how to make decisions or that they're have told them how to do this before and they're just not getting it, or a real common one is like, man, this feels like common sense. And so what they really want is they want people who understand how to think like them rather than how to just do what they tell them to do. All right. So the big mistake that a lot of times happens is we tell our people what to do and we start to train, like basically train them with the habit of come to me for the answer again next time. We tell them what to do, they go do it, they come back to us, hey, now what do you want me to do? And so we're actually like reinforcing this behavior. We're giving them solutions. We think we're being helpful by answering the how question. This is often the biggest challenge for a lot of leaders is resist answering how. Okay, you want your people to be able to answer the how question. And so ultimately what we want is we want people who understand how to think and not just what to do. Okay, so here's kind of the big idea. They did a study at Stanford a few years back, and they had a bunch of people and they put them in one at a time. They would take these people and they'd put them in the corner of a room. Okay, and they would say, I want you to take 10 steps, like go across the room, right? Pretty vague instructions, but they said, I want you to take action, right? Take 10 steps. And so what would happen is person would start walking, and halfway across the room, they would kick a chair in front of this person. That's my chair. And what would happen is every single person would either stop dead in their tracks, or they would end up taking like a 90-degree turn and end up somewhere completely different than where they had originally intended, right? We can see kind of based on the trajectory, they were trying to end up over here, and instead they end up over here. So they did the same study, different group of people this time. They put them in the same room, they put them in the corner. And the only thing that they changed was instead of saying, hey, I want you to take 10 steps, was they said, I want you to end up in this corner of the room. And so person sets off, starts walking. Same thing, about halfway across the room, they kick a chair in front of them. And every single person either moves the chair, goes around the chair, up and over the chair, through the chair. All of them end up getting around the chair and continuing on their way. And 100% of people ended up in this corner of the room. Okay? Now, the only difference was the instructions. In this scenario over here, they told them, hey, just start, just head off in a direction, just get going, right? How often does this happen to us as leaders where we're like, just do something, right? Take action, like get moving, get going. You're going too slow. And we end up telling people like, just start, just go. The downside of this is that we never gave them the clear outcome, right? We never told them what it was that we wanted that allowed them to start figuring out how to solve these problems themselves instead of coming to us for the answers or making a poor decision because they weren't clear on what the outcome was. All right. Now, we'll talk more about this as well, but this is really where this concept of 131 comes in. So the big idea here, this is a concept from Dan Martell. And what he talks about in this is three things. 131 stands for one problem, three options, and one suggestion. And this is crucial to getting your team to understand how to think and not just what to do. So first off, the first one helps them identify one problem. So we're going to start with one problem because we can only solve one problem at a time. And a problem well defined is already half solved. And so we have to determine, is this surface level or is this a root cause? Surface level is like the fire, right? I call it the matches in the gasoline. A lot of times what happens is fire comes up in the business and teams are really good at rallying together to put out the fire, but we never take the time to stop and evaluate why did the fire start in the first place. This is the difference between the urgent versus important, if you're familiar with the Eisenhower matrix. So this is where we have to have that meeting once a week where we evaluate the issues that are roots, the things that are coming up that are causing the fires to start. Why were the matches sitting next to the gasoline to begin with? Okay. Does anybody have matches that they're carrying around in their pocket? All right. So this is where we have to take the time to figure that out. And so we'll have surface level issues or we have root cause issues. And basically, they should be able to summarize in a sentence or two what the problem is. From there, we want them to shift to being solution oriented. All right. Now, the reason that we want 3 options, and Dan doesn't talk about this, but there's actually a really clever psychology behind it. When somebody is stuck in their amygdala, where they are in a triggered state, fight or flight, they are black and white. It's either this or this. And so they'll only come up with 2 options. What we want is we want somebody to come up with 3 because it proves that they're operating in their prefrontal cortex where creativity lives. So if I could have a team of creative, solution-oriented problem solvers, I'm probably going to do pretty well because my people are going to understand how to think and how to solve problems without me. So this step gets them to be solution-oriented, not just stay stuck in the problem. Doing nothing isn't an option, so they got to come up with 3 options. Okay. Again, they should be able to summarize these pretty quickly. And then the last piece is they should say which one of those options they're in favor of and why, right? They have done a little bit more research, a little bit more digging. They should have more context to this than we would. And so their opinion is oftentimes a lot more valid than ours, depending on the situation. And so from there, we're then going to just kind of create a coaching opportunity where we can poke and prod a little bit to say, did you consider this? In this scenario, would you also do the same thing? And so we can start to develop this decision-making ability in them to where they start to understand how to think like we would think. Okay? So again, the first one is identifying one problem. Problem well defined is already half solved. We want to isolate just one thing. Okay? So we want to develop the skill set in our people to be able to identify one problem. From there, shift to 3 solutions. We want them to be solution oriented. From there, which one are you in favor of? Now, this can be done really conversationally as well. And what's great about it is it works both up within your team and down within your team. So imagine a team member calls you with a problem. Oh man, okay, great. Yeah, okay, what do we do about it? They tell you an option. Okay, great. All right, what else could we do? Tell you a second option. All right, man, is there like a mix of the 2 of those? Or gosh, if this one wasn't an option, what else would we do? They come up with a third, right? I'm resisting the urge to answer the how question. And from there, I also have to resist saying, yeah, that's great, do it, because now they never get to practice making the decision. So instead, I want to go, okay, so based on everything that you know, which one do you think we should go with? I'm now coaching them into what it would look like to make a decision where they get to practice when the stakes are low. Okay, so again, this can be very conversational. Same thing can happen in the other direction. There you go. Let's say you're the operator in the business, you're calling the business owner, you're like, hey, I got a problem. Here's 3 solutions I came up with. This is the one that I'm in favor of, but like, tell me what you think. I'm not too sure. That now becomes a maybe 3-minute conversation instead of a 30-minute conversation. So as a leader, how much does that free you up? Even if you do have to get roped into some of these things, to have these conversations just be so much more productive and faster. And so again, works in both directions, can be very conversational, but this is the framework that is crucial to getting your team to understand how to think and not just what to do, so that you start developing leaders within the business and not just a bunch of task doers. All right, so when it comes to accountability, this is our bulletproof 4 components of accountability framework that we use, that we have found every accountability issue comes back to one of these 4 things. Now, fundamentally, you got to make sure that you are addressing this in the right way. So accountability is created in the expectations in the pre-frame, not in the follow-through or the follow-up. So a lot of people make the mistake of trying to create accountability by coming up behind somebody and shaking their finger at them. Instead, what we want to do is we are going to create accountability in the setup so that it makes the conversation afterwards very obvious and very easy. So here's what this looks like. We're going to use an example of just a task at first. This can be done in a weekly meeting. This could also be done on a daily basis. This can be used with subcontractors, and it can also be conversational. So keep all that in mind. So we're going to go through this step by step. So first off, it's what is getting done? What's the task? Okay. First question we need to ask is, what is the priority level? Like, where does this fall? Is this high, medium, low, ASAP? We can't have everything be urgent. Otherwise, it's like the boy who cried wolf and nothing is urgent. So we have to know where does this fall in terms of priority? This is also helpful. Like, let's say you've got a subcontractor you're working with. You want to know, hey, are you working with other clients? Where do I fall in terms of priority for you? I may be okay being low priority right now, but there may come a point in time where, hey, I need some horsepower behind this. I need to be your number one priority. And so we just want to have good expectations set and be able to communicate about that with where that falls. This also works great if you're communicating, say, with like your executive assistant, and you're letting them know, hey, this task that I just gave you that I need help with is low priority in the midst of everything that we're doing, or hey, this is super high priority. So they start to understand how you think, and we're on the same page in terms of priority. What this does is it allows them to know where everything stacks up so that if they do hit their capacity limitation, they know what thing is allowed to fall off the list, or what the lowest, maybe not allowed, but what thing is lowest priority that should fall rather than dropping the ball on something that is high priority. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is, what is the deadline? Is this need to be done today, tomorrow, next week? If it's more than a week out, we want to create a milestone, a check-in that is within a week. So if it's, it's going to take me 3 weeks to get this done, great. How far could you get in a week? So this is another mistake people commonly make, is they end up making the time the variable and the task the constant. So if you think back to like 7th grade algebra, we've got constants, we've got variables. We want the time to be the constant and the task to be the variable, so that we can ask the question, how far will you be in 7 days? Instead of asking the person, how long do you need to get this done? And they say, oh, I need 3 weeks, I need 4 weeks. Then that may be true. Great. Let's flip the conversation. Let's swap the variable and the constant, and let's say, hey, in 7 days, 7 days being the constant, how far will you have got? What does that milestone look like in 7 days? So that we can check in and we can see, are you on track, are you off track? Okay. Now, we also want to clarify is that if I say, hey, this needs to be done Friday, are we talking about when I wake up, this should be in my inbox Friday morning? Or are we saying by the end of the day on Friday, this needs to be done? So make sure that you've got clarity on those. Next is, what does done look like? Does done mean that you sent me the email? Does done mean, if I ask for a quote on something, does that mean that I've got 3 quotes with pricing, with when they can start and how long it's going to take? Or is it, hey, I just need 1 quote and I need it by the beginning of the day, end of the day, right? We can work through the deadline pieces, but what does done actually look like? Do I want a written invoice, or do I just need to know what the number is? And so this can help alleviate somebody doing too much work that we don't want them wasting time on, and making sure that they actually complete the task if you expected more, right? If I wanted a written proposal rather than just to know what the dollar amount was, I want to make sure that I have that so I can pull the trigger. Another example would be, you can sometimes have this be somewhat ambiguous where you don't have to spell it out, so you can give a principle for definition of done. So let's say, for instance, you've got somebody doing demo on a construction project. The definition of done may be, hey, you know that the demo is done when it's ready to reinstall. So could you go in and reinstall right now, or is there other work you'd have to do to remove or take things out? Okay, so this could be like, hey, did you leave the appliances? Is there still a dumpster in the front yard? Did you vacuum, sweep, clean up, right? Like, there's other components here to really not just nitpick, but just have clarity on what done looks like. And then the last piece here is duration. How long do you think it's going to take? Different than deadline. Deadline is when is it going to be done by. Duration is how long are you going to be working on it. So you may have a deadline of, oh man, I got a lot to do this week. I can have that done by Friday. Duration, it's going to take me probably 3 hours, and I'll be able to kind of split that up, piece that together to have it done by Friday. Maybe I'm doing all 3 hours on Thursday, and that may be worth a conversation, versus, man, I'm going to do an hour a day for the next 3 days. But we just want to know duration, how long is that going to take? And this is where the loop comes in, because what will happen is somebody may say, hey, that's a 5-minute task in terms of the duration. If we're saying, hey, by next week, this is the milestone I need to see. That's what I'm going to check in on. I'm going to make sure that this is done. And they say, that's a 5-minute task. Great. We don't want to plan for the best case scenario. We want to plan for most likely. So most likely, how long is this going to take? Okay, well, it's a 5-minute task, but most likely, I'm probably going to have to follow up on it 3 times. Probably going to have to make a phone call. Really, it's probably more like 45 minutes. Okay, great. So let's plan for 45 minutes. All right. Now, the opposite can be true as well. Somebody says that's probably 8 hours to get that done. My next question is, all right, well, do you have 8 hours within the next week to be able to get that done? Capacity wise, do you have 8 hours worth of margin at this current point in time to be able to take that on? For an employee, sometimes that may be a problem. Why the heck do you have 8 hours worth of free time in the next 7 days that you think you can take this on? Usually that's not the case. And so then we're going to have to loop and reevaluate that definition of done. We're going to say, okay, let's change the milestone then. So in 7 days, instead of you getting, 50 units completed, you're only going to get 25 units completed. Because what we want to do is we want to set people up for success. This is a fatal flaw people make, is they think they're going to set super high expectations. What happens is their team falls short of them, misses the target. There's no consequence, nothing happens, and all we do is now reinforce a losing culture or a losing mentality within the company. Instead, it's a little counterintuitive, but we want to instill a winning culture by throttling back our expectations early on, providing support, and then continuing to raise the bar or raise the expectations as people are checking them off. So let's say it's completing 25 units. We want to then be able to the following week say, hey, do you think you can do 25 more? Oh yeah, no problem. Do you think you can do 30? Yeah, I can do that. Awesome. Well, let's do 30. And so now we get a little incremental increase. They get to check the box. They get the dopamine hit. Yes, I got it done. And we start to reinforce this winning culture that starts to snowball and build momentum. So it's a little counterintuitive, but we want to actually throttle back some of those expectations early on as we're holding people accountable so that they're reinforcing the positive behavior, hitting the dopamine, and building this winning mentality and this winning culture of I do what I say I'm gonna do, and I have achievable metrics to hit. Okay, so if we need to, we're gonna move that milestone back. We're gonna change the definition of done if we realize when we get to duration that it's unrealistic. So we're gonna loop back to definition of done. Okay, let's update this. Okay, now based on this new updated definition of done, now tell me how long is that gonna take? Okay, now are we all in agreement on that? Awesome, great, okay. Final time through, I'm just gonna run through the whole list. I'm gonna say, awesome, so we're both on the same page that this is high priority. It needs to be done by Friday. Here's what done looks like. It's gonna be in my inbox, blah, 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 in the morning, not in the afternoon, with estimates, proposals that I can sign to initiate, and you think that's gonna take you about 45 minutes. Agreed? Yeah? I like to have if you're doing this like in your weekly meetings, I like to have a checkbox. I like to have something digital that everybody has access to. It's crystal clear so they can go back and revisit it if they need to, where they have signed on the dotted line basically for the duration and in agreement with all these items so that if we come back a week from now, I can reinforce the black and white nature of is this done or is this not done? I can either check the box or I can't check the box. And so when I set this expectation, I like to use the phrase and ask the question like, is this a slam dunk? Based on the priority, deadline, definition, done, and duration that we just laid out, is this a slam dunk, no brainer, absolute guarantee? As long as that answer is yes, great, we're moving on. If there's any hesitation, if they say no, I'm gonna loop back to that definition of done. What would it need to be in order for this to be a slam dunk, guaranteed, absolutely $1 million on the line, you can hit this target, this metric? Okay, let's make it that, right? Now, sometimes you may have to make sure your team's not sandbagging, but over time you'll see that come out where if they are very easily hitting these targets, obviously we're going to start raising that standard, and that's where we'll make sure that they're not sandbagging some of those results, okay? So that's where the loop comes in. When we follow up on this and we are asking the question, hey, did this get done or not? We have all of this criteria spelled out to make it crystal clear, really obvious what was expected. All right. Now, this is where you have to be laser focused on the language that people use. So when I ask the question, hey, is this done? And somebody says, yeah, pretty much, almost, just about, that's not an absolute. So sometimes I will retort like, can I pretty much pay you? Can I almost pay you? No. So we need absolutes. This is either done or it's not done. Yes or no. Because if we check this off as being done when it's pretty much, then what happens oftentimes is that nobody circles back on it, nobody follows through, it slips through the cracks, and we miss out sometimes on critical details here. So we're going to be a stickler for, is this absolute done or not done? Can I check the box or not? And that's why when I set it up, I want to be really clear on that in terms of what that definition of done looks like. All right. So when we revisit it, if it is a scenario where it's, oh yeah, I didn't have time to get to that. It's like, well, help me understand that, because last week you're the one who said that this was possible, this was feasible, this is how long it would take, and that you would be able to hit this deadline. So where did we miss the mark? This is the crucial pivot potentially, where we want to make sure we're solving the right problem and not the wrong problem. We may have somebody who has poor time management, or somebody who doesn't understand the skill of prioritization. They may be taking on work that isn't theirs. They may be taking over responsibility for other people in their department and not getting their own tasks done. They may be very good intentioned, but they're not delivering on what it is that we need them to deliver on. And that's why we're trying to spell this out for them in terms of what the priority level is on some of these things. Where does this stack up in relation to your day-to-day? So the other piece that comes up is somebody who has a 5-minute task and it doesn't get done. Again, it's a really clear and obvious conversation around, help me understand how you didn't have 5 minutes to get this done. Like, where did we miss the mark? You've had access to this, we emailed it out, et cetera, et cetera. And that's one of the other pieces that's really helpful, is if you do this in a format, and I can show you in an Excel sheet how we also track this as a team on a weekly basis. We'll go through that on your weekly meeting cadence. You can see, based on each person, how many hours of things they have stacked up. So you may have somebody who's got 6 hours worth of stuff total stacked up because they've got multiple tasks to get done. And so then we can kind of look at it and go, oof, man, do you have the capability to get all of this done? Right? Now, when we revisit this and something is not done, hey, help me understand how you didn't have 5 minutes to get this done. Where do we miss the mark? Where did we get off track? Did you not prioritize this? That doesn't make sense because we were on the same page that this was high priority. Did time get away from you, et cetera, et cetera? A lot of times there's some time management issues. There's some prioritization issues. Sometimes there's some definition of done where people just don't get something across the finish line. And again, that's where we got to be clear on, like, hey, this is the expectation. This is where people need to know what they're responsible for and where their responsibility starts and where their responsibility ends. All right. So let's say this happens multiple times. This is where, again, becomes really clear, really obvious. It's also documented, where you can have a conversation that's pretty candid to say, hey, in the setup of going into the following week of getting this item done, we can have that conversation that says, hey, so again, we throttled back the milestone. You're telling me this is how long you think it's going to take. We're going on 3 weeks of this not getting done. You understand that if we come in next week and this still isn't done, it makes me question your ability to fulfill this role or this responsibility within the company. Like, this is a very non-triggering or non-threatening way to have a very factual conversation, objective around this task is your responsibility. If you are not able to get this done, you're telling me that you can't fulfill your role in this job, these responsibilities within the company. And in which case, I'm going to have to find somebody else to do them. And we're going to have to kind of reevaluate your position or your role in the company here. Like, we're setting the stage for what otherwise would be a really awkward conversation. We're kind of putting it up in the beginning so that this is a very obvious, we know what we're talking about when we come into this conversation, another week later. And so this piece of accountability really does help separate your A players from your C players, because a lot of times we have C players who are disguised as B players. They're kind of tricking you because they're pretty much almost, I forgot about that. And when we start documenting it, we start seeing, like, man, you don't really deliver on any of this stuff that you said you were going to do. While A players like to know their metrics. They want to see that they got a base hit. They want to know their batting average. They want to know how many home runs they have. And so when we put this information in front of them and they have an achievable target, they have a box that they can check, they actually like it. They like coming in and getting that dopamine hit of saying, yep, I did it. I got it. What's next? And that's kind of the last piece here, is that when somebody does complete one of these items, the crucial question to ask is, okay, what's next? What's the next step? Because If we have a 3-week total deadline and we created a 1-week milestone, I want to now create another subsequent 1-week milestone so that we don't lose track of this thing until we hit that 3-week mark. I want to have, okay, what's the next thing that we should be checking in on? And this is how that we make sure when it comes to projects, people stay on track and that we can come alongside and help and support them if they start to get off track, right? So it's not meant to be something where we're going to hold their hand to the fire if they don't get something done. We're actually coming in with an approach of curiosity as well as support and going, how do I help you hit these objectives? How do I help you reach these milestones? Are there any roadblocks that you need my help getting out of the way? I'm not going to do your job for you, but if there's an instance where you need a little more horsepower, you need some help solving a problem, you need a second opinion making a decision, like this is the instance where we can talk through some of that. And a lot of this will come up in weekly meetings, but this is a framework that works really well on a daily basis, and it can also be very conversational. All right. Conversationally, it's like, man, how high a priority is this? Pretty obvious, pretty straightforward. Hey, what's the deadline? Hey, when's this going to be done by? Great. Do you want that beginning of the day or end of the day? Okay, awesome. And so just to be clear, this is what done looks like, or this is what you're looking for. Okay, great. Hey, here's how long I think that's going to take. Okay. Like this, again, can be very conversational. You can also ask those questions in the other direction. Hey, you understand this is high priority, right? Yeah. Or, hey, this is low priority. Just be aware. Deadline is, a week out. Great. I just need that by first thing in the morning on Friday. Awesome. Here's what I mean when I say this is what I'm looking for. This is what that task is. So that's a way to kind of clarify definition of done is here's what I mean. Let me clarify this. Let me help make sure you understand what I'm asking for, or even giving them some of the understanding around here's how I'm going to use this, or here's what the next step is. And so here's where I need you to get this to, right? I need to explain to them where their responsibility ends. And sometimes explaining to them what the next step is helps them understand, oh, this is how far I need to move the ball down the field. And then how long do you think that's going to take? Great. That duration piece, if you are assigning something, you can assign the priority, you can assign the deadline, you can assign the definition of done, but I want the other person to volunteer the duration to me, because that's where they now sign on for this accountability. They're saying, this is how long I think it's going to take. And you will very quickly snuff out if somebody's a bad guesser. If they underestimate or overestimate the duration frequently, you'll start to kind of suss that out. So this is the accountability framework, and these are the 4 crucial components of accountability that if you utilize these, you will make accountability very easy in the follow through because you set these 4 expectations ahead of time.